Week 16 action. The New York Jets taking on the Los Angeles Rams. It's crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Rams, Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome, Rams fans and Jets fans. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets, along with Travis Rodgers, the co-host of Locked On Rams, here for Crossover Thursday as the Jets host the Rams in Week 16 NFL action. You should know that this Crossover Thursday, like all Crossover Thursdays, is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Well, Travis, great to chat with you today. As we mentioned before we started recording, the last time these teams met, it was a very memorable game for the New York Jets because it was their first win of the 2020 season. It was around this time of year. The Jets were 0-13 going to Los Angeles. They were in line to get the pick that turned into Trevor Lawrence, and then they pulled an upset over the Los Angeles Rams, a win that made many Jets fans unhappy at the time. And we're back today. The Rams coming to New York. Great to be with you.
Yeah, it's good to be with you too, John. The Rams have gotten hot at the right time of the season, so this is we're heading into the last part of it, and Rams fans are very excited.
The Rams may be hot. It is not going to be hot in the New York area Sunday. The wind chill is going to be in the teens. So a very, very frosty day. If you're going out to the stadium on Sunday, make sure you pack plenty of warm weather gear. So Travis, Los Angeles Rams coming to this game on a 3-game winning streak. What are the big stories around this team right now heading into this game?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that this may be the team they were supposed to be all along, that it wasn't until about 3 or 4 weeks ago that they finally got their full complement of players, that, they'd have one come back, 2 more drop out. But we finally got to the point where, in particular, they got the offensive line squared away. They've had the same 5 guys. This will make the 5th week in a row. I don't think it's any coincidence that they've won 4 of those 5 games. I think that's a big deal. Matthew Stafford has kind of elevated his game to another level. And Puka Nacua has finally looked like Puka Nacua from a year ago over the last couple of games. I think those are the big ones as far as the positives go for the Rams. I think on the negative side, at least as far as like the curiosity goes, is Cooper Kupp is coming off of a game against San Francisco about 10 days ago where he played the entire game, was not injured, and never touched the ball. He had 0 receptions along the way. I know he killed a bunch of fantasy owners a lot with that particular line, but I think that's where most Rams fans' heads are heading into this one.
And, I think you mentioned something that really resonated with me because last year the Jets had injury after injury on the offensive line, and that forced them to play a lot of backups, but it also forced them to reshuffle their offensive line every week. We'd have one guy moving from left to the right side. And I think continuity is really important. I'm not surprised to hear that, the Rams winning streak coincides with them finally getting some stability on that offensive line.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll go back to a few seasons ago, the season after the Rams won the Super Bowl, the 2022 season, opening night against the Bills, they had 2 of their offensive linemen go down. Then the next week they had another one. And then the week after that, they had 2 more. They did not play the same 5 guys up front until week 13 of that season. And by that point, they were on 3rd and 4th string guys. They were pulling guys off of the practice squad. They were literally, people think I'm joking when I say this, but this is a fact. They were pulling guys out of the police academy to play offensive line for them. That's how thin they were. But by the time you got towards the end of the season, they had the same 5 guys. They were backups, they were 3rd stringers and beyond, but they were the same guys week after week after week. And as bad as that team was, and as disappointing as that season was, that team won 2 of their final 5 games, which doesn't sound like much, but they'd only won 3 of their previous 12. So when you finally get those same guys together, even if they're not your 5 best guys, if the same 5 guys play week after week, you can find that continuity, and it allows Sean McVay to know which plays he can call, which plays he can't call, what Matthew Stafford has time to do, what he doesn't have time to do. And I think that's why the Rams have played their best football of the season over the last 3 weeks.
So I think a lot of fans of the New York area are familiar with Sean McVay. They're familiar with the types of offenses he typically runs, but I think a lot of fans probably haven't caught the intricacies of the Rams attack this year. Would you call this like a typical Sean McVay attack, or do you think there have been some tweaks to an extent?
No, I think there's been some tweaks. John, I think the biggest thing is that, at least for most people that don't maybe not watch the Rams week to week, you think the Rams are a team that's going to, be ultra aggressive, that's going to push the ball down the field, that's going to pass the ball over and over and over again. And that's just not the way that they've played this season. They've been a pretty balanced football team as far as running and passing goes, especially when they've been playing much better of late. Kyren Williams is over 1,000 yards again. I think he's one of the better backs in the NFL, and maybe not the most dynamic, maybe not a guy you're going to see on a bunch of highlight clips, but he's a guy that just gets the job done play after play, series after series. And Sean McVay plays it pretty close to the vest. This is not a high flying offense. Though they've only scored 30 points twice all season long. Here we are heading into the 15th game of the season. They only have 2 30-point games all season long. They're pretty predictable. They're pretty steady, but what they do well is they execute their game plan. And I think that, Sean McVay comes into the league a few years ago, and more than a few years ago now. This is his 8th year as the coach of the Rams, but he came in and really did light up the scoreboard and really did have some things that were new to the league. But what they do really well is execute week in and week out and just make what they do work very well, very, very well for them. If you have watched the Rams much at all, it's kind of the same stuff they do week to week to week. They've done a little bit more 5 wide receiver sets over the last couple of weeks, a little bit less tight ends. I don't know if Tyler Higbee is going to play this week. We've been seeing that, he's kind of, willy or won't he for the last couple of weeks, but they haven't had much success with their tight ends. So they're a pretty predictable offense. It's just when they do have all those weapons, even with the predictability, it's pretty effective.
What's the big story right now for the Rams on defense?
Whether or not they're any good. I mean, they've had some moments where they look like a really solid, high-level defense. You go back to their most recent game against 49ers, they didn't give up a touchdown. They only gave up 6 points, but it was kind of in the soup. It was in the rain. It wasn't particularly, the Niners were a little shorthanded, no Christian McCaffrey and that kind of stuff, but they did a good job. You go back to the week before that, they gave up 6 touchdowns to Josh Allen. Now, maybe that's a Josh Allen thing more than it is a Rams defense thing. I'm hopeful that that's what it is, but this has been a defense that has been marked by inconsistency for most of the year. They struggle against the run. They struggle when it comes to having their young players, in particular Jared Verse, letting mobile quarterbacks, which probably won't be a huge deal against the Jets, but when they have played quarterbacks that can move their feet a little bit, guys kind of jumping out the window, going out that back door, however you want to say it, they get a little tight and guys go around. That's a big deal. But Mike Crishuel, I should say, is in his first year as the defensive coordinator of this team. And, it's been a mixed bag. Coming into the first year without Aaron Donald in a decade, there was a lot of question marks, but I think the totality of this defense is it's very young. It's a little inexperienced, but when it plays at its best, it's pretty darn good. And Jared Verse is the real thing. Like he is a high-level NFL player. He's what you hope to get when you draft in the first round.
Who do you think is like the main guy on that defense? Because there's a guy, Quinnen Williams for the Jets. If Quinnen Williams plays well, the defense is going to have a good game. When he doesn't, the defense is going to have a bad game. Which player would you say that is for the Rams?
Who it's been over the last few weeks, and I think, John, that you're asking a really important question, because if you would have asked me this a month ago, I would have said they don't have one. They don't have somebody that's kind of the standard bearer of that defense. Like I just mentioned his name ago. That's been Aaron Donald forever and ever. And when it wasn't, on the rare occasion where it wasn't Aaron Donald, it was Jalen Ramsey. And you had Von Miller, and you had some of these other guys that could really kind of hold down that defense. Right now, I think the most talented player on the defense is Jared Verse, but the guy that's kind of really elevated his game over the last month or so is a name that you don't hear called a whole bunch. He's a pretty gritty guy. Is Christian Roseboom, one of their linebackers. They traded away Ernest Jones at the start of the season. They've had a bunch of guys go through that position, but Roseboom, at least over the last month, has kind of held it down, and Rams fans haven't been complaining about him as much. I think he was the guy that was kind of the focus of a lot of consternation through the early part of the season, but he had an interception in week 10 or 11. I forget what it was exactly, but since then he's played much, much better, much more consistently. And that second layer of the Rams defense has really calmed down as a result of that.
All right. Well, an excellent scouting report on the Los Angeles Rams by Travis. Ahead here on this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Rams, we're going to flip the script. Travis will put me on the hot seat again. That's ahead on crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. This crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Rams is brought to you by the College Football Playoff on TNT. It's that time of year. The College Football Playoff is back. And with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports' coverage of the College Football Playoff begins December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff Kickoff Show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. And our crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Rams is also brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Well, our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and the Rise and Fall of a Roman Empire. Maybe soon they'll create a class on running an NFL offense. The Jets, after struggling all year, we'll talk about that with Travis, finally starting to click the last couple of weeks. So maybe the Jets took that class at Hillsdale College. Just kidding. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, and discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets, along with Travis Rodgers, the co-host of Locked On Rams, getting you ready for Week 16 action. The Los Angeles Rams in the Meadowlands to take on the Jets this Sunday. Travis, where do you want to start with the Jets? It's been, let's say, an eventful season.
Yeah, I'll say that. Yeah, for sure. Even as someone who obviously doesn't follow the Jets the way you, John, I feel like I can't go a Sunday afternoon without getting a full Jets update. So I have a theory, and you tell me whether or not the Jets last week against Jacksonville, if this was their day. I have a theory that every team in the league has one week where they look great, where everything that they try is just like, hey, where's that been all year? Where's that team that I'm seeing right now? Why can't they do that week to week? I think for the Rams, it was against Buffalo a couple of weeks ago where they go and they play one of the best teams and they ever find a way to hand them a loss. You know, not long after struggling to beat a Raider team, the Raiders beat Baltimore. I think every team has that week. Was the Jets team last week their week, or could that team show up against the Rams?
All right, let me start by saying I love your theory, because that's a very familiar theory to Locked On Jets fans, because I've said that myself. So
okay,
great minds think alike, I think. I love your theory. I don't think the Jets played great. I think the Jets offense played a great 4 minutes against Jacksonville. Okay. They, in particular, Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams had 3 catches for 135 yards in the final 4 minutes of that game. I thought on defense, the Jets actually had a pretty bad day. They gave up 25 points to a Mac Jones quarterbacked offense. I thought Jacksonville left a lot of throws on the field. I thought offensively, the Jets were shaky through the first 56 minutes of the game. They had some moments, but they were shaky. I think it was a great 4 minutes. I think, I got to be honest with you, I think it was, I appreciate your generosity towards the Jets. You know, we don't get to hear many, my listeners can tell you, I don't say many nice things about the Jets this season on Locked On Jets. So I'm sure there are many Jets fans who appreciate the kind words you had to say about the team. Yeah. Maybe they'd rather you host Locked On Jets for your kindness. I think that game was a lot about them playing a very bad Jacksonville team, though. I think that now I will say this: I do think the offense 2 straight weeks has actually played pretty well. And, you know, look, it may have only been 4 minutes, but it was a dynamic 4 minutes. They put up 30 points for the first time all season, so maybe the offense is starting to click a little bit. I don't think I would be that generous in my appraisal of how the Jets played, though.
What is it that has been missing all season long? Is there one big thing that the Jets have struggled with? Is it a lot of little things? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Is it the coach? Is it the ownership? Is it all of the above?
Oh, I'd start with ownership. But I think the part of the problem has been all of the above, because I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. After they've had so many horrible losses that you kind of lose track of which loss is which. But again, after they lost to Miami 2 weeks ago, I mentioned that this team, I always believe that, in the NFL, you want to be good at everything. You want to, because it's, it's like some people say, oh, offense is all that matters. And I don't agree with that, because some weeks your offense won't play well and you need your defense to lift you up. And sometimes some weeks you're passing games down, so you need to lean on your running game. So I think it's really important to be versatile in what you can do well. And I said after that game, the Jets are the most versatile team in the NFL, but it's all bad because they find new ways. Like if the passing game's working, the running game's not working. If the defense is good, the offense is off. It's like no matter what they do, they always find just enough to lose. And that, that ended last week against Jacksonville. But I think ownership's the place to start. I feel like every week I'm doing a show about the owner, which is probably unusual. I think maybe Locked On Cowboys.
Yeah,
that was Jerry Jones, but I think a lot of the dysfunction starts with the ownership, because the owner has made a lot of very impulsive moves this year, and I think none of them was more impulsive than firing the head coach 5 weeks into the season. And look, I have to be honest with you. At the time, I wasn't necessarily jumping up and down. Like there were a lot of Jets fans who thought it was a great move. I didn't think it was a great move. I didn't think it would damage them, but I do think that would actually turn out to be a damaging move, because the players have not responded. Sometimes you'll see a coach get fired, like with the Raiders last year, where they just wanted the guy out and they respond and they play better. I think the Jets were confused. I think the Jets players liked Robert Saleh, but more tangibly, the replacement Jeff Ulbrich, first of all, has not done a great job in place of Saleh, but second, he was also the defensive coordinator. And if you think about the acumen you lost when Saleh left the building, now you have your defensive coordinator pulled in all these different directions. And ever since then, the Jets have been one of the worst defenses in the NFL. The Jets may have, some numbers suggest they've been the worst defense in the NFL since he left. And that's after 2 straight seasons where they were a top 5 defense. I think Aaron Rodgers has looked his age. I think, the last 2 weeks have been different, but for most of the season, he hasn't been willing to stand in the pocket and deliver the ball deep. Now that's changed the last 2 weeks. So maybe we're looking at a little late season resurgence from Rodgers after the Jets are out of the race, but he's looked 40. And I think that's also part of the story. So long way to say lots of different issues with the Jets.
Yeah, John. So you mentioned you kind of were finished up with talking about Aaron Rodgers a little bit. And, if you turn on your computer, if you look at your phone, if you turn on the television, you cannot escape Aaron Rodgers in one form or another. But just purely from a football perspective, put the Netflix series and all the noise around Aaron Rodgers aside, what kind of football player is he at this point in his career? Like you said, he's 40 years old. The list of guys that have played that position well at 40 years old include one person, Tom Brady. What is Aaron Rodgers as a football player at this point?
And I think that part of the issue is that the Jets were expecting him to be an outlier like Tom Brady, but his mobility is greatly diminished. Now, I will say this: since the bye week, the last three games, it's been better. Prior to the bye week, he really couldn't move at all. He was on the injury report a lot. He was on the various points. He was on the injury report for an ankle, a hamstring, a knee. He's off the injury report now. He's moving better within the pocket. He's able to find soft spots to evade the pass rush a little bit better. He also is kind of gotten back to being a guy who, if he sees something down the field, he'll break left or right. What he can't do as well anymore, even when he's healthy, is outrun a defensive lineman chasing him down. So it's been better the last 3 weeks. Prior to the last 3 weeks, he really couldn't move. He was just a statue back there. But the big issue, I think this has been the biggest issue, is he spent much of the season afraid to take a hit. And maybe that's because he's been banged up, but he's thrown deep at a far lower rate than he has the rest of his career. Like when in his Green Bay days, he was always one of the guys who was most prone to throw the deep ball. This year, I think he has the second quickest time to release behind Tua Tagovailoa in the league. He's just looking at the first hint of pressure. He's been looking to get the ball out as quick as possible. Again, that's changed the last 2 weeks. Maybe he's starting to get healthy. I don't know, but that's a big root of the Jets' issues. Through much of the season, the Jets have not been able to produce big plays in the passing game. And that's the number one reason, because for once, the Jets' offensive line actually is pretty decent. I've been hosting Locked On Jets since 2016, and you listen to like any random episode 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I'm probably complaining about the offensive line. Not so much this year. The offensive line's actually been pretty decent, but the quarterback has really limited what they've been able to do.
What about on the other side? Where can the Rams attack? Where are some of the vulnerabilities in that Jets defense? Where do they struggle with the most?
The run defense has been interesting because there have been moments where they've actually stopped the run pretty effectively, but there have been games where they've been absolutely gashed. And this defensive line has been an issue. The Jets made a lot of changes to the defensive line over the offseason. They took what was a very good unit. They tried to make some additions. Like the big ticket addition was Hassan Reddick. They also signed Javon Kinlaw from San Francisco, a guy Robert Saleh was familiar with, to play defensive tackle next to Quinnen Williams. They brought in Leki Fatu, who used to play with Arizona, so some NFC West guys you guys may know. Nothing has worked. The defensive line's a weakness. The other issue is the Jets entered the season with what I thought was one of maybe the best corner trio in the league with Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, and Michael Carter II. And I think you can say at this point, all three of them have kind of underperformed. Now, DJ Reed's had a good season overall, but he has struggled over the last couple of weeks. And Sauce Gardner is not playing the first team All-Pro. He was the last 2 years. Michael Carter II was one of the top slot corners in the league the last 2 years. Jets gave him a big extension before the start of this season. He's performed poorly in the slot. So you have a lot of guys underperforming. You have a defense where the tackling has been very inconsistent from week to week. You have a lot of busted assignments. Again, I think a part of it's just the head coach used to be the defensive coordinator. And first of all, you had a defensive-oriented head coach who probably was hands-on with it. Now he's gone, and the coordinator is also the interim head coach, so he doesn't have as much time to dedicate. So I think there are all kinds of issues with this defense right now, and it's part of the reason they've struggled so much. I think you can throw out the season-long rankings. So you may look at the season rankings, say they're okay, they're middle of the pack, but there's been a huge difference between the period where Robert Saleh was the defensive coordinator and when Jeff Ulbrich took over. Since Jeff Ulbrich took over, they may be the worst defense in the league.
So last one for me, John, as far, it's this time of year, teams that have been eliminated from playoff contention, teams that haven't lived up to expectations. You see it all across the league. Have they quit?
No. They went out and beat Jacksonville last week.
Yeah.
So I think there have been games where the effort's been lacking. They played a game in Arizona in November where I called them out. I just said these guys put no effort into the game. But look, they went out there in a game. Look, if they were going to quit, it would have been last week, because last week they were up against Jacksonville, a team they were competing with for draft positioning.
Right.
And they went out there and played hard, and they won the game. And I think Rodgers right now, he doesn't want to go. I think this is it for Rodgers. I would be really surprised if he came back to the Jets next year. I think he's probably going to retire after the season. I think there's a motivation for him to go out. He's not going to go out with a playoff berth. He doesn't want to go out with this level of ugliness, the level of ugliness we've seen through much of the season with the Jets. So they're going to push. I mean, they're going to try and win this game. They may not. This is not a very good team. It's a team that's lacking a lot of fundamental areas. But no, I don't think this team has quit. Well, you've heard about the Rams. You've heard about the Jets. Now here on our crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Rams, we're going to give you our keys to victory. That's ahead here on crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Our episode today of Locked On Jets and Locked On Rams is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Checking out the line for this game, the Rams are 3-point favorites on the road at MetLife Stadium. All week on Locked On Jets, I've been saying that. I don't know, it looks a little small to me. I don't know how you feel about this, Travis. Well, Jets fans, if you don't believe that line's giving the Jets enough respect, or a Rams fan, if you believe in your team, FanDuel's the place to get in on the action, because again, you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. All right, it's Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John, the host of Locked On Jets, along with Travis, the co-host of Locked On Rams. Travis, Rams are on the road, so I'll let you go first. What are your keys to victory in this game?
Yeah, real quick, John, just talking about that line. Rams fans know that the Rams, the second you start thinking that they're going to cover is when they do not. They stay away with the Rams. Go find something else to do. I think the biggest thing for the Rams coming into this one is to get out of there in one piece, to be as cautious as you possibly can, because the Rams' path to the postseason does not necessarily include a win against the Jets. If their last two games of the season are both division games, they play Arizona and they play Seattle both at home in the final 2 weeks of the season. If they win both of those games, regardless of what happens on Sunday morning against the Jets, the Rams are going to get to where they want to get to. So I don't think that you're going to see a whole bunch of exotic things. I don't think you're going to see things that we haven't seen very much. I think it's going to be a very predictable, steady game plan from Aaron Rodgers. That said, I think that they are playing pretty well. If they run the ball effectively and if they make their kicks, I think the Rams are in pretty good shape. I think that last week, despite beating San Francisco, which has kind of been a thorn in their side for the last several years, the biggest thing to come out of that is that their rookie kicker, Josh Carty, finally had a pretty good day. He's been all over the map. He got off to a decent start at the beginning of the season and really struggled for the last few weeks, but he did go 4 for 4 against San Francisco. If they're going to beat Arizona, if they're going to beat Seattle, they're going to need him at some point to make a big kick. So I think that's a big one. If they can get in there, don't turn the ball over. Kyron Williams runs it somewhere between 24 to 28 times, and Josh Carty makes the kicks he's supposed to make. And I'm talking short field goals and PATs. I think the Rams are in pretty good shape.
Well, I think that the Jets – I actually think the Jets are going to be in this game. The Jets have only been blown out 3 times all season long. They may be 4-10, but really the only times they've been blown out were week 1 against San Francisco, the game they played in Pittsburgh on Sunday night in October, and then the game I mentioned in November in Arizona. So I don't know, maybe that's a bad omen because 2 of those 3 games were against NFC West competition. But I think a lot of elements. I think one of the things you laid out is the Rams finishing the season against NFC West competition. I think I always wonder a little bit about the West Coast team playing the 10 a.m. kickoff on the road.
McVay's pretty good at that. He's kind of the guy that bucks that trend. I want to say he's 8-2 in that situation. He's actually pretty good going east and playing early.
That's very good stats. So that undercuts that point. I do think, cold weather. I think the Jets will be in this
cold weather is a good one, though, John. The Rams have been historically lousy when the weather is cold, so that could be a big deal.
Yeah, so I think for the Jets, number one is help on Jared Verse. Jets have another rookie tackle. Jets have a rookie tackle going against him. It'll be a matchup of a couple rookie first-round picks. Olu Fashanu, who took over for Tyron Smith a few weeks back, and he's been good. He's moved around the line this year. He started at right tackle. He began the season the backup. Morgan Moses, who's the right tackle, got injured in week 3 against the Patriots, so Fashanu got some time at right tackle. He played some guard and really struggled, kind of like his strength was an issue. Since he's taken over for Tyron Smith, he's played very well. In fact, 2 of the last 3 games, he has not given up a pressure. But I think that you got to give pressure. You got to give him help against Jared Verse. I think if there's a game record for the Rams in this game, it's Jared Verse. So I think you want to give Fashanu plenty of help. Aside from that, I think a lot of it's focusing on the fundamentals. This Jets defense has been a mess all season long, and I think 2 big issues have been tackling and communication on the back end. I think those are 2 things that the Jets need. In fact, those would be my keys 2 and 3 is Jets need to, first of all, make sure they tackle well. It's been a week-to-week thing. There are some weeks where they've tackled terribly, other weeks where they've tackled well. Some weeks it's been an emphasis at practice. I think this is the type of week where it should be an emphasis at practice. And then I think maybe the Jets just need to simplify their coverages, but they just have too many busts on the back end. And there were a couple against Jacksonville that could have cost them the game that Mac Jones just did not hit. There was an open guy that Mac Jones just did not hit. So I think a lot of these are basics, but the little things have cost the Jets all season long. This is a team with a 3-7 record in 1-score games. And it's because they don't do the little things like that. They don't communicate on the back end on defense. They don't tackle effectively. And that's how you end up with a record like this. And that's why the Rams are playing this game, and it's significant for them, and it's not that significant for the Jets.
Yeah, the Rams have an opportunity to do something that has never happened in the history of the NFL, and that's be 3 games under 500 in back-to-back years and make the playoffs both years. That's never happened. That's something that if they can finish off this season with, if they win they control their own fate. You beat Arizona, you beat Seattle, you go to the playoffs. But they were 3-6 a year ago. They were 1-4 this year, and like we kind of started this whole thing, John, this is a great testament to Sean McVay and his culture building and his ability to continue to move forward and figure things out. Even though they looked pretty dire early, the Rams, you would have told me that they were 8-6 and had their own fate in their hands, I wouldn't have believed you. And here we are.
And just as was the case in 2020, 4 years ago, when these teams played in December, there'd be a fair number of Jets fans rooting for the Rams for that draft positioning. Yeah. The Jets hurt themselves draft wise last week when they beat Jacksonville. So we'll see. I think a lot of Jets fans are going to be Rams fans this week, but a lot of Jets fans will still root for the team. Kind of an even divide in the fan base, but we'll see what happens.
We'll take what we can get.
Travis, great chatting with you. I'm sorry we only get to do this once every 4 years. Obviously, they're not going to be in the Super Bowl this year because the Jets certainly won't be there. But
yeah,
great chatting with you. Look forward to doing this again someday.
You too, John. Thank you.
And Jets fans and Rams fans, be sure to tune in tomorrow. Locked On Rams. Travis will be there. I'll be on Locked On Jets. We'll give you more thoughts as we head into this Week 16 matchup between the Jets and the Rams. Enjoy your Thursday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Locked On Podcast Network.